Hello, everybody. Let's exit to port. It is currently 13:16 Central European summertime? No. Is it summertime now?
Yes.
Is it? When did that happen?
Yep. No, it isn't. It changes on Sunday the 30th.
Ah, there you go. Right. It's just those silly Americans that have done things a bit before us, as usual.
Mm-hmm.
On March 18th, we've had a few days of a lot of snow here in northern Norway, with almost 60 centimeters of snow coming down over a couple of days. But now, today, as of recording, it's plus 10 degrees outside and everything is melting again. So, yeah, the weather's fun. How's your weather, Grumbles?
It's very bright, shiny, but cold. We have 8 degrees centigrade above zero, and yeah, still hitting minus temperatures overnight sometimes. But allegedly on Friday, 20 degrees, so work that one out.
Wow. What?
Yeah.
Holy bonobos, Batman. That's quite the change.
Yep.
That's the sort of stuff that will get people severely ill, like proper, that really deep cold that sets in, and you there's snot everywhere and nothing is fun, That's the sort of things that can happen then. So, just wrap up or something. I don't know. I don't know what to do. I just stay inside these days. It's safe here. It's nice here. It's not so people-y.
I have taken to wearing my Save the Children Christmassy jumper quite a lot. I'm wearing it right now.
Oh, nice. I actually have the Save the Children stream team one that we got for the first year I was part of it. That was I have it hanging on my chair as we speak, actually. So
nice.
Anyway, welcome to the podcast, everybody. This time around is far more relaxed than last time, because last time I do believe I was in the middle of ramping up to an exam, which I delivered on the 9th of March. So yes, I've now had a week of downtime, a week of being able to recenter myself, and a week of getting back into my assessment for my kind of neurospicy. I will touch more on that at a different point when I actually have a diagnosis. But probably, knowing me. But yeah, thank you so much to the patrons for choosing to be part of what we do here. $2 a month. You can pledge, and you will get your episodes early. You will guarantee to get your comment and or question in. And at some point, I want to start involving more and more of the patrons as part of our Conquest and Cataclysm thing, or potentially do some more in-depth episodes. Be that Ask Us Anything, or that sort of style of episode. We'll see. But yeah, exit support on Patreon. Patreon.com/exit support. $2 a month, or $2 equivalent. We're getting closer and closer to being able to fully fund every single month through Patreon. So thank you so much for that. You are not forgotten, and you will be mentioned a bit later on. We're just gonna dive straight into our recently played games, because we have it's a proper mixed bag this time around, and I do believe that this is kind of showing the evolution of our content, that we are more and more jumping into very, very different types of games, and kind of showing our proper variety streamer feathers here, honestly. And you've recently touched on nested. Oh, lands. I've written wrong. Nested last. I've written there.
Yeah, I was just rereading the screenshot, and I was like, "Oh, speaking of
there we go.
obvious typos that you asked me," and I said, "No, there aren't any."
It's fine on the screen now. I don't know what you're talking about for those of you watching on YouTube. No idea what you mean by that.
No one will ever know.
Yeah, no one will ever know. At least if we don't keep talking about it. But yeah, nested lands. You described this by the tags that it had on Steam as medieval roleplay multiplayer something.
Yeah. We're on point with this one.
Yeah.
Shout out to the developers, what's their names, and publishers, who's it's. Yeah, I just gone by the tags, like popular user-defined tags for this product, to be fair. Crafting medieval building multiplayer RPG.
That's a mouthful.
Yep.
But I want to point out, I watched some of your stream where you did this. They're not wrong, are they?
Not really. It is a bit of a consolidation of many things. It's, I mean, you know, they probably don't necessarily want to hear it this way, but it's inevitable, and it's a way to convey it clearly to people. It's like, think medieval dynasty, but with plagues.
With plagues.
Obviously some different lore around it as well. But yeah, it's a sort of it's only in alpha at the point where I tested it. They just reached out to me and said, "Hey, you mind looking at this one and giving us some feedback? No embargoes, etc." I was like, "Okay, sure," because it did pique my interest. And yeah, you can tell obviously that it is in alpha. It was actually very playable, and we got a good, like, I think 7 or so hours of stream out of it. You know, could have gone on, and yeah, sent them back a very detailed, sort of professionally laid out chunk of feedback. To which I've heard no response, funnily enough. So I was glad I put that extra effort in. But anyway, yeah, quite enjoyed it. It was again, in the context of it being in alpha. I thought that the kind of core of it was good, and the plague mechanics, where you've got to kind of guide and help build up your village and have all your villagers, these NPCs that you bring on board, kind of, you know, perform roles or take jobs within the settlement and everything, with this constant sort of background threat of, like, firstly, your village could be attacked randomly at certain, you know, whatever, and then additionally, anybody that dies, and that there's a chance that the plague's just gonna spring up out of them. So you got to kind of deal with that. It's yeah, I think it was pretty solid as an alpha goes, and yeah, looking forward to seeing what that's going to be like down the line, especially in multiplayer. Co-op could be a lot of fun.
So you see this as something to keep an eye on the horizon then?
Yeah, definitely worth keeping an eye on. I think if you're into that kind of medieval dynasty, Bellwright, those kinds of games, this one brings this added twist of the plague and a little bit more kind of lore, or I get the feeling that they want to kind of develop a full story around it. Yeah, I definitely think it's worth keeping an eye on.
So here's going to be a bit of a hard question, I think. When you compare it to the Dynasty games, that they obviously have a thought for, there's some sort of lore, there's some sort of story going on. Does this feel more like it's rooted in the story and aimed towards it than the Dynasty games, or?
I definitely feel like they haven't. Oh, shut up, Steam! Stop auto playing that video. You're annoying me. Apologies. It definitely feels like it's been written with that at its core as like a purposeful central point of the story, rather than just like, oh, let's throw this on so it looks different kind of thing. It's all about that, you're returning to some lands because you're essentially escaping the plague in the where you previously were, and heading back to kind of like your ancestral homelands, which are not completely immune or cut off from it entirely. So it just isn't as prevalent, or other things have beset this land. So yeah, I feel like, again, it feels like it's been done in a way of like, that they really want to connect this all up and make it part, central to the experience. Whether they manage to come through with that, we'll see. Time will tell. But it didn't feel like it was something that was just kind of, oh, let's just do like a medieval dynasty game with this other health bar or something like that. It was more thought out and better implemented than like a bolt on. I think.
Okay, nice. Well, definitely, we'll keep our eyes on that. Any other titles outside of the Dynasty games that you would kind of say that it touches on? You mentioned Bellwright already. Any others?
Yeah.
Like does
really.
Does it feel like it have elements of 7 Days to Die or Rust or something like that? Or
Yeah, that's what I was just thinking through. Like, it doesn't at this stage feel like there's an element of they're not turning into zombies and walking through the village and stuff like that. So the threats that you face from the NPCs is more like actually quite nicely done, like different tiers of like, there's like disorganized bandits who might just stumble upon your village, and then there's more organized criminal gangs and stuff like that, who are sort of better armed, better armored, such. And there was hints of like, if your village becomes too successful or you become too close to areas that are known sort of bandit haunts or near an organized crime area, then you're going to have more trouble. Like they might not even know of your village existing, because if you think in medieval times, who knows if there's a village 50 miles down the road if no one ever goes down there, kind of thing. So I kind of liked that idea, that premise. We we'll just have to wait and see how they implement that, because I do like this idea that you say you're out scouting and you get spotted by bandits and they chase after you and then they stumble upon your village. Maybe you've got a limited amount of time or something to deal with them before one of them runs off and snitches and tells the organized crime gangs where you're living and that kind of thing. But I'm adding a bit to it that isn't there yet, but it had at least that kind of loose idea in the background, I think.
all right, well, gonna be interesting to see how that ends up. So we'll have a look. Hopefully they'll take their time to fully flush this out in a good way, work on mechanics and whatnot, and not just go from alpha and directly into release. Because there's been a few of these kinds of games that have done that, when it just ended up being a disappointment, can we will say. And so the building mechanic of this, like, is this this is what likens it to Dynasty, I'm guessing.
Yeah, it's the sort of thing you'd expect. It's blueprints rather than freeform building. Some interesting styles, and animations and things that they've gone with. It's definitely, it's there. It's sufficiently for an alpha, so you can look at it. But you can tell again that it needs more development. It needs a little bit of sort of TLC and everything. But kind of, again, I like the direction and the art style that they've chosen to start with. It gives you quite a good immersive feeling. Yeah.
There's something about the blueprint system that I really enjoy, because every game that I've played with that allows you to put down a blueprint and then over time fill in a piece here, a piece there, or just so that you know that this is planned here. This is supposed to come up here. Like, it's not just we have the resources, they'll stay in a box until we are ready to fully commit to it. No, it allows you to plan. It allows you to kind of shape these things in a much better way. The forest allowed us that with the free building tools rules and everything. That was really cool. Um, I haven't built as much in the Dynasty games, but I like having watched you play on it. I find that really nice. And honestly, if it was one game I really wished we had that in, it's Enshrouded, where we could almost blueprint out something, but it's going to be hard to do with the building system there. However, there is a game that both you and me have played, and I have played recently, that has a blueprint system that I really enjoy, and that's Lightyear Frontier. And to allow, like, one thing I also really enjoy in Lightyear Frontier is the fact that it's the crafting from the inventory boxes. How does Nested Lands compare there? Because Lightyear Frontier, fabulous game. I don't really need to say much about it with like the layout of the farms and everything and so on. It's just a wonderful, cool game. You're a mech, you farm, but I enjoy the building system in it and how inventories interact. How has Nested Lands done that?
Nested Lands is it's one of those where you contribute the resources to the blueprint until it's done. So you're not like in Medieval Dynasty, sort of hammering at it piece by piece. You're just kind of delivering all the bits and bobs into position. One of the things I liked with Nested Lands was that you could build a builder's hut and employ your villagers as builders, and then they would just go about using the central storage and building the buildings as you go. However, the sort of limiting element of it, which kind of makes sense, was, well, if you have a woodcutter who can go out and gather the wood and bring that back to storage, then the builder can go and collect those materials and carry on building. And if you don't, well, you've got to supply those materials, that kind of thing. So it was, I liked it, and I think that will develop in a good direction. It's as far as, so it doesn't work in the sense of like having a central storage and then you can just draw from it. I do think that there's potential for that, and I think it would probably be a really, really good thing if that game had like, well, here's your central storage. Like, I only reached at the end of my little playthrough, I think they're building the warehouse up. But as far as I could tell, it wasn't like, well, if we put all the resources in the warehouse, then they're accessible everywhere and you can just go around and slap your hammer on things. I think that would be kind of cool. Because then you could focus your village. It's all about balancing what your villagers are doing essentially in that game.
Right. So, well, I guess it wouldn't really fit Nested Lands to allow you to just look on the building and or the blueprint and go, boop, here's everything. So I'm guessing you would have to pick that up. But I will say, being able to have everything stored in a box somewhere, putting up a blueprint, and then going commit all, and then it just kind of goes floop. Instead of having to personally carry things, I really do enjoy that. I think,
yeah. What I want to see, like when I think about this kind of thing, what I envisage in my mind's eye is, if you take something like Manor Lords, where you've got all the animations and the villagers go and collect the materials and bring them over, and they're using saws and hammers, and you see the development of the building like piece by piece. I'd love to see that. And again, you probably wouldn't be able to do it to that level of depth because it's a different kind of game and different requirements for, PC specs and calculations and whatever. But for me, it would be more fun if you had to deliver the resources to a building site and then the construction could begin, especially if you could use NPCs assigned for that or even work together with them. But that it was more, okay, but you have to go and get the ox and the cart and go and pick up the wood and deliver it along the path to that building and unload it into the area next to where the building site is, and then it could be used and sort of hammered into place and everything. I'd love to see that in terms of a level of immersion in these kinds of games. However, you get more into the, well, is this a construction sim now? Or so like maybe I'm looking for, medieval construction simulator or something like that. I don't know. I feel like there's a gap there. Maybe there's some game or whatever. Let us know, listeners, if there is something out there that is sort of along those lines. But I think something like that could be super immersive and very, very cool, very fun. I'd much prefer that than just I pick up 10 logs in my pocket because that's what my character's inventory will carry. And I walk to the site and then I go click, you know, they could make it a little bit more immersive than that potentially, although it's not their aim and their focal point on that game. I just think that would be, I feel like that's a gap that they could build into.
I will present to you the alternate title from the people that make Space Engineers. I think it's called Medieval Engineer or Siege Engineer or something.
Okay.
You might want to check that out.
Okay. There you go.
I haven't fully looked at it, but I know they brought out another title that was like it was medieval themed. So yeah.
Okay.
But you mentioned inventory space. And if there's one game that is infamous for how meticulously you probably should and need to manage your inventory, especially when out raiding and looting and stuff, it's Project Zomboid. That game is so insanely intricate with attention to detail in places that other games aren't, and I want to hear about your I want to say kind of first proper look into it, because you've been in groups before, but this is your first kind of full focused look at it and being able to shape your own world in your own in your own pace. Like, so what is your thought and kind of idea around Zomboid right now?
So I firstly, you know, as you said, I've dabbled in it in the past, but very much in the case of like way out of my depth, too much going on all around me, and found it difficult to learn at first. And then I tried solo a couple of times, and it just seemed almost impossible. Like you're just dead within a minute, and then dead within 2 more minutes, and dead again in a minute later. And it was like, this, I'm not actually enjoying this experience. It's just horrific. But thankfully, I decided to just kind of give it a gap, a significant amount of time away from it, and then come back and have another look. And Lanovar, one of my mod team, was like very intrigued and interested in having a look, because we've seen things like Burke's event recently, and basically it was kind of cool to be able to sort of co-pilot through this rather than just kind of fuddle my way through it on my own. And my impression is, firstly, I was kind of blown away once I got past those opening sequences and surviving at the very, very beginning. That it is as intricate and there's so much detail and depth to it that I hadn't really seen. I guess I kind of had an inkling that it was there, but I just never looked at it. And all of a sudden, it was like, oh, there's a crafting menu. Like it was that kind of level of revelation to me. And there's always pros and cons with things like that, because sometimes it can be a bit like the other day I got hyper focused because I needed one particular material to make an item, and I went a bit down the rabbit hole of like, oh, without this one item everything's ruined. And it was like, well, no, actually you just carry on surviving and living in the world. But I think that's also correlated to the last week and a half or so where I've been quite badly unwell, so I was just like not really awake and focused on what I wanted to do. I was kind of a zombie myself. So looking at it and reflecting on it now, and I've done a little bit more testing yesterday and some more thinking on it, and we've made some adaptations to the server we're running. I think that it's rightfully a very successful product and experience that a lot of people enjoy. I think that it's one of those where I think, and I know there's limitations based on like how it's written and whatever, but it's like one or two improved UI features and menus away from being like a mega hit. Like like being a Minecraft level or whatever, I'm not even sure. I haven't even looked at the numbers, like how big it is. So I could be mistaken and it could already be that big. But it feels like it's so, beloved of the community. And I can see why I'm kind of addicted to it right now. It's I've got a bit of an addictive trait about me in this context, and I'm really really into it. But there's a few little things where it's like, oh, why is this kind of click, or why does the screen look like, in particular the crafting. I think there's a couple of mods that will overhaul it, but I don't want to digress into that right now. But overall, the more I've kind of played and started getting into, and especially coming at it from like a role-playing point of view, because that's what I want to achieve with my time in Zomboid, is I want to make a story. And already we're starting to do a little bit of light storytelling and light RP in it, and at the moment we're still at the kind of very much testing and learning the game and understanding it at all stage. So it was very positive to be able to get to that point. But I like this intricacy, as long as it doesn't become like that's kind of a mindset thing. Like, does it become a complete hindrance and you feel like, oh, I can't get over this hurdle, so I'm just not, it becomes boring because you just fixate on something. And I think that if, in all things being equal, I'm able to kind of zoom out and kind of, or immerse myself and be the character and let the story unfold around me, then all of that kind of like the gamey stuff around the edges kind of disappears a bit into the peripheral. And I think it's going to be a big hit for us. I'm hoping so, because I'm enjoying it a lot. And there's always that thing for us as content creators, like you might have the thing that you really enjoy doing, but if it doesn't click for you in terms of content and that and the audience, then it doesn't work. But I think we can have a good crack at this one in much the same way that the Space Engineers ones worked out so far for us.
The one thing that I struggled with Zomboid when I played it was the loss of a character that I'd been working on and potentially had some progress with was just so annoying to me. I did not enjoy starting working on a character and then losing it because of a random happenstance that goes on in a world, like something makes it unable to get away from a zombie, and then you get bitten, and then you just lose the character to a randomness. And I struggle with that, but the journal mod really helped me with that. And to explain to those who might not be familiar, the journal mod allows you to almost make your character persistent. And I say almost, because you're able to write in a journal, and you need to actually have the journal, you need to have the pen in order to do this. It's not like you can just magically save your character. And it allows you to note down your skills that you've learned, such as electronics and so on. And then you can pick up that book with a new character and kind of continue on from there, so that it's not completely fully lost. So what I did when I played a tiny bit with it was, the learning time of something takes a long time, but then I have the ability to save it through the journal. And it made it much more palatable. It made it much more acceptable to be able to kind of lose a character, because if not, then it's just going to turn into a roguelike for me, and that's not something that I necessarily enjoy in games. There are certain games that works for roguelike, but in a setting like that, that's not my way forward to it. And no, like, another thing that I very much enjoy in Zomboid was the fact that, much like in real life, if you only sit on a couch and eat crisps, or chips if you prefer it in the American way, is your character will likely just become fat and die of heart failure. It is very much like life. But yeah,
Yep.
it can happen, and I really do enjoy that little detail of it. But it's one of those things that makes it so hard to adapt to it for a lot of people, because a lot of games, nutrition is nutrition. There's no difference in how you take it in. There's no like energy in equals energy to be able to be spent. But in Zomboid, much like in Scum, actually, you need to balance your intake. You need to make sure that you have the vitamins, that you have enough fat and fiber and whatnot. You need to balance it, and there are probably mods to make that a slightly bit easier. But I need a simpler world in Zomboid for my own sake, so that I actually dare go out the house. I will actually dare go out the house if I know that, okay, it's not really a problem if I die. I'll have to go retrieve my gear somehow, but I can deal with that.
Yeah. Which is kind of what we're doing, which is a little bit, working around the overall system as it is, but we're using that skill recovery journal. Only just started like learning and using it, but we're considering, even when we maybe eventually do like an RP server, that we might do something where like we create our own custom starting pack, and everyone would get a journal to start with. So we would do something like that, and then you get like a minute or something's grace, so that when you spawn in and you just happen to be in a room full of zombies, you don't just insta lose it all. And just make it because what I really want to achieve is I want to achieve some storytelling through it, using the game as a vehicle for that, rather than just, hey, we're playing some Zomboid. And there'll be a bit of both. And right now we're kind of in that, we're playing some Zomboid to learn how it works, and then once we've got a handle on that, we've already we started with like as few mods and everything as possible, because that's less likely to cause failures and stuff like that. And I think I accidentally added in about 20 mods since then, because I just was like, oh, well, this would be really cool, and why doesn't the game have this, and it needs this, and it needs that. So it's mostly just little quality of life things, but we added in the skill journal one quite early on, because I got two kind of possibilities. I'd rather do your character kind of lives on, and maybe they passed out somewhere. Like when you die, maybe you were dragged away from a horde by one of your allies or something like that. If you've got a small group, you could do that kind of thing. And then you just need to like get back to your place and reread your journal and stuff like that. But also make the journal like more of a story tool as well. Like even if it's doing a mechanical impact on your character, just make that part of the story. Maybe somebody holds your journal ransom or something like that. You could have those kind of scenarios. And then the other variant, which we might do at some point, would be I might do like it's not really a Walking Dead, but like a Walking Dead kind of inspired idea of like, here's a group of characters, and maybe there's like 5 or 10 of us playing, but everybody gets like 3 characters, and you tell 3 different mini stories, and whenever you die, that kind of thing. And I like this idea of like, and then we wrap it all together and make a broader story. This is just like, this person lived until this point, and I think possibly it will be more acceptable to die and lose all your stuff if it's set in with a different premise of like, this is part of, they died, but now you pick your second character. Maybe you predefine 3 characters early on, or however people want to do it. I kind of like this idea of it being like, there's this group of survivors and they get split up or whatever, and maybe they find each other and maybe not. So like, your first character died. Well, the next day you see there's Pete on the corner, and Pete was your second character or something. So the players obviously recognize each other, but it's a different character, and different interactions ensue. So those are kind of like the 2 ideas, like 2 different spin-off story ideas that I've got. But I definitely want to start first of all with the whole, we'll use the journal, and we'll do more of you passed out and some passerby managed to rescue you and drag you into a house and leave you. They don't know if you're going to turn or not, so they just drove off, and it's good luck, because it's the apocalypse kind of thing. and then it's just the story of you getting back to your journal and everything.
Some of my favorite YouTube creators out there is called Neebs Gaming. They do a lot of 7 Days to Die and Ark and so on. And some of the things they've done is within their little group, they've teamed up 2 and 2, and then they've done who survives the longest, or that kind of thing. And I think it could be cool to do kind of a Survivor series thing. Like once you're eliminated, and then just have a bit of a story of it afterwards. But I like that idea. I really do. Ooh, my lights just blinked. So if I suddenly disappear, we might have to re-record this entire episode. I want to point that out.
It's aliens.
Yeah, let's not. Anyway, speaking of telling a story, I've recently picked up Assassin's Creed Origins. Well, I say I picked it up. I started playing it. I was supposed to play it the first time around when I went from Assassin's Creed 1 and all the way through to Valhalla, but Valhalla came out just as I was finishing up Black Flag, so I didn't get to do Origins and Odyssey. Origins and Odyssey is the third trilogy they were doing. And I love it. As a story game, this is really nice. And it plays like an Assassin's Creed game, of course, but that open world of being able to roam around and listen to conversations and interact with people in a way where they, like, if you have this group of soldiers that are harassing a village, oh, that's another blink. Then you get to choose if you want to stab them or not. You know, it's that sort of thing. And I love that storytelling. Like, I love that way of kind of living in the story, because a lot of games force you to do things in a certain way, and the Assassin's Creed games from Black Flag and on have not done that, and I think it's fabulous. It's so great. And just like that, we can also very easily skirt on over to Assassin's Creed Odyssey, which is another game I'll be picking up. I'm doing that on my YouTube, but we'll talk a bit more about that a bit later. But Assassin's Creed Odyssey is also going to be a story playthrough, where Odyssey, of course, it's in ancient Greece. Origins is in ancient Egypt. In fact, yesterday as I was streaming, I suddenly had an angry Lima in my chat saying, "Tiger, you bastard, how dare you?" And he said, like, look at Discord DMs. And I was like, what's going on? And in my DMs I have, "You're playing Assassin's Creed in Egypt without telling? You bastard." It gave me a good giggle. Him, of course, being into Egyptology and studying that now, it's natural. But that was a lot of fun. But I think, like, I've seen a lot of people say that they really enjoy these because of the ties to historical events, things you can recognize if you are a history buff or such. Like, there are things you can recognize. It's not going to be a perfect retelling by all means, but I really enjoy games that kind of give you a behind the scenes look of said historical event. You know, I think it's Assassin's Creed Brotherhood, where you are in Rome just after Colosseum has been built properly. And you're roaming around, and like, you're in Rome, and you're helping restore order and such, and it's really cool. And I just enjoy those games for that.
Cool.
and you get your little tools, and you do whatever you want, and then your customers are happy. No, wait, that's Trash Goblin. Have you looked at Trash Goblin?
No.
I think this is going to be my chill game for a while now. I already have Tiny Glade and a few others that I'm just playing just to calm my brain down. But Trash Goblin is... I saw Mari play this. You are a Trash Goblin. That's simply it. You pick up a piece of trash,
Mm-hmm.
and then you get your chisel, and you chisel away the dirt and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And then you see that, oh, this is an artifact. You then clean said artifact.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes you get customers outside your window that want to buy said artifacts.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes they ask for artifacts that are put together into new artifacts. So then you have to clean more parts and actually hook them up together. And then you can customize your little abode. And it's yeah. It is going to be...
I think I might have seen Gassy play it, yeah.
Chill game of the year. I'm calling it.
Yeah.
Calling it right now. It's just going to be super amazingly chill. And it's going to be the best game for mental health out there.
Nice.
I'm calling it now. And another game that's going to be good for mental health, mostly because it's going to allow me to see that Grumbles was completely overreacting, is Dave the Diver.
Mm.
Because I was watching you play Dave the Diver, and it gave me anxiety. Well, no, not really. But it gave me a feeling of, oh, I can't do this.
Mm.
Then I watched Mari play it, and I was like, wait, I can do this. Because we're talking the approach, like the difference in approach between the two of you. You have a very chaotic approach, sir. What? That's all?
Yeah. I mean, I can't deny it. Everything I do is pretty chaotic.
Yeah, fair. No, at the time, it's like with your kind of not panicky, but slightly reaction to things, it led me to believe that, oh no, this is not gonna go well with my thalassophobia.
Mm-hmm.
However, watching Mari play and go deep down, and doing her thing, I was like, no, this is actually gonna be fine.
Mm.
So I'm looking forward to going through that story, because that I've seen moments here and there, and I know it's gonna be fun. Yeah.
Yeah, it was very much an arcadey game. I guess it's just that part of my brain that's always like, well, if I was in Dave's position right now and like in scuba gear underwater and looking at that thing coming at me, so I'm not really looking at it like as a, the flat screen that I'm seeing, the 2D arcade. I'm looking at it more as like, God, what if I was down here? So I guess that's where those kind of panicky moments come from. I don't know.
Yeah, like it makes sense. Like I'm right there with you on it, but I'm still very much looking forward to testing it out. But there is one that I think we are gonna have to check out together at some point, because this came up during, I can't remember when it came up, but I was playing a game. I think it was after having talked to Peace and Quiet about a game about digging a hole, which is fun by all means. Wish there was more. She mentioned a game called Ville. And having sat down and looked at some other creators out there play this, like Sips and a few others on Twitch, I think I can safely say this is going to be shenanigans. and it's gonna be a good little game to have a look at together with more friends, because it's got elements of House Flipper, it's got elements of Construction Simulator and other games, but in full-on multiplayer.
Mm-hmm.
So you have a little village or town or whatever you want to call it, where people are going to be renovating and stuff. And I, like, as soon as I started looking at it, I immediately fell in love with it. And it's been on Steam sale now. So I chose to pick it up.
Yeah.
And I will report back closer when I've actually had the time to play it. But let's just say the same kind of feeling I had for Construction Sim and Roadcraft and so on is it's hitting me with Contractville just looking at it.
Yeah.
There are many like it, but this one, it there's something. There's some sort of extra box that's being ticked, and it's telling me that yes, this is very much where I want to go.
Yeah. Yeah. I've had a little look at it as well since you mentioned it, and it does look very tempting.
So keep your eyes peeled for that, everybody. If anyone else has any good suggestions for games for us to have a look at on either Twitch or YouTube, depending on if it's story or not, feel free to let us know. Or potentially if you want to be part of Contractville at some point. I don't know. We'll figure it out. But yes, I mentioned other creators and being on Twitch and such, and that brings us over to content creation, where there's a couple of things we're going to be wanting to talk about. Very quick mention for any streamers listening out there: please be aware of the changes to the terms of service part. They released in February a little part about how infractions will be solved for streamers. So just go look that up. We're not going to cover that in detail. However, I've recently started doing more stuff on YouTube, where it's been more story focused stuff, like Assassin's Creed Origins. So I go live to YouTube, and then I let the VOD become an episode. So just 1 to 2 hours, 2 to 3 days a week, and just let that do its thing. And it made me think, what platforms do certain types of content fit on? And I like we might have talked a tiny bit about this before, and I know I've certainly talked about it with stats at some point, but I feel like long play content and story content fits YouTube much better than on Twitch. What do you think?
Yeah, it's a curious one. I wouldn't say that. I mean, okay, so my experience is that, and I know, you know, it's going to be different for everyone, but my experience has very much been or let's maybe start from a different angle. Live streaming on Twitch and YouTube seems quite distinctly different. And that seems to be a fairly universal thing. And it's interesting that I know some creators that do really well on YouTube and not so much on Twitch, and vice versa. Most of the people I know are on Twitch, and then they have YouTube stuff. And unless they've built up quite a significant following, then or they have somebody doing editing for them that helps a lot as well on the YouTube side, then they typically it doesn't do that well. It doesn't gain that much traction on YouTube. So what I've seen is that it feels like it takes forever to build up any kind of stable audience on YouTube. And that's kind of weird and a bit off-putting when you're new to it. And what I've seen with YouTube content is story or like more episodic or even just long form. It could just be one video where you just play like, I'm trying this game out for the first time. Here's 2 hours of it or something. That definitely lends itself more to YouTube in terms of like maybe in air quotes like random viewership kind of thing. You don't need necessarily a built up community for it because people are just stumbling across it based on whatever algorithms and how things are being presented to them. Whereas on Twitch, it's much more about, you know, your community, your established community, and whether people vibe with a certain sort of game. Or, but more importantly, I think on Twitch, they're typically more vibing with the content creator themselves. And then for whatever reason, that seems to be a bit harder to establish. I've found, at least for me, on the YouTube side, the audience is much more what's the right word to choose here? They're very like I think the YouTube audience seems to be much more focused in on what the content is. Like, what game are you playing? What are you doing? Where are you in the game? What is it you're showing me content wise? And you just happen to be there. And on Twitch, it's more, oh, here's the streamer I like. Oh, they're playing this game today. Cool.
Yeah.
So Twitch seems to be streamer first, content second, and YouTube seems to be content first, streamer almost borderline irrelevant, unless you're doing. So I'm talking about it from like a gaming category kind of point of view, and maybe even like subsets of that are different, like esports and all that. I don't count that in the same way. But if you're more of an IRL or more of a, hey, this is my personality and this is I'm presenting myself and my thoughts or whatever on YouTube, then that can be phenomenally successful. Can be, or you know, it doesn't have to be. So there's also very, very different content over there, which potentially would get a little bit more drowned and lost in the mix over on the Twitch side. I don't know. I don't really have experience of that stuff so much on the Twitch side. So, they're definitely very, very different beasts, and they have different algorithms and different, you know, discoverabilities and things, which Twitch has always kind of lagged a little bit with, and we'll talk about a little bit about that later on. Yeah, so it can be quite. I find the it's not a transition, but the expanding your content out to reach an audience on YouTube is definitely challenging and differently challenging than it was on Twitch. Yeah, that's my experience so far.
I mean, you mentioned this with how long it takes to build up an audience, and I feel like in both cases it does, like it requires a dedication to the space. But I'm definitely with you on it taking what feels like more of a dedication on YouTube somehow. I'm not quite sure how to word it and say it in a good way, but yeah, no, it does feel like the build up on YouTube to reach a consistent audience is very, very, very long compared to on Twitch. And I think it is because on at least on Twitch, I feel like I have the ability as a streamer to interact more. I could probably interact just as much while I'm live streaming on YouTube, but there's something about the ease of setting up events and going live on Twitch that makes it more accessible almost as a content creator, and that makes it easier for me to just get into the rhythm of, yeah, I'm here today and I'm talking to people. And that interactivity is a big part of it for what kind of game I feel fits on Twitch for my sake, at least. I'm not going to speak for other people, but for my sake, Twitch leans well into the more action packed, be that World of Warships or Call of Duty or something like that, or even Project Zomboid for that matter, because you have that in the moment feel of things. Whereas if I was watching someone on YouTube do, let's say, a Project Zomboid thing, I don't think I would be as tied to it somehow. But watching someone go through a story that has moments or a long build up, like your guys' Space Engineers things, there's definitely stuff in there where I'm like, yeah, this fits on YouTube. This makes sense for my brain to watch on YouTube, because there I can easily pause things and come back to it if I want to, without having to dig down into the VODs and find the archives if I've missed something on a Twitch stream, if that makes sense. Because like, there are certain games that where you, like for instance in World of Warships, the moment you have it, like putting 6 citadels in a Nakhimov from across the map in a Vermont, yeah, it's going to be a fairly unique moment, but it's not. It's like, it's not the end of the world if you miss it, you know? There will be more of these moments. There will be more of these sorts of things going on. It's not to say it's a forgettable moment, but it fits in that moment. You get to celebrate it, and then you move on. But for anything that has a longer standing story, be that Assassin's Creed or whatever, then being able to pause and actually take in the story bit by bit and such, it makes more sense. Because if you miss something, you can actually instantly go back, rewatch it, and then be like, oh shoot, yeah, okay, I'm with you now, and then catch up, and continue on. And it feels like it fits YouTube more somehow. And I honestly, I think if Twitch had an easier VOD mechanic where they kind of ingrain the YouTube part of it, where it turns into episodes, then it would be a completely different platform. It would be an all-encompassing platform. But well, we both know what they've done with our storage space, so yeah.
I think it would bankrupt Twitch. I think that there's this fuzzy line between YouTube and Twitch where, like, to me, Twitch always has been and still is. That's your live broadcast.
Yeah.
Again, they both do what the other one does to a certain degree. But Twitch is like, to me, it's like Twitch is, you're watching a live broadcast. It's almost like radio. Twitch is like, you're either listening and you're tuning into that radio or you're not. And it goes on without you. And YouTube is more like renting out, the VHS or the DVD or whatever. So YouTube has always been the on demand when I've got time, but also with the right to pause it and come back to it, or never, watch half of it, whatever. Whereas Twitch is like, you're either were there or you weren't there. And I personally, and this is, there's no way I can back this up, but my gut feeling has always been, in order for the two of them not to turn all of their guns at each other and just see who survives, they say, okay, we kind of have this gentleman's agreement. You do that bit, we do this bit, everybody's happy.
Yeah, definitely.
And like, so I think you're right in the sense of the story, and anything that you want. I think it's not so much purely the content itself, but more for each content creator in the decision of like, this is how I want to, this is the content I want to create, and this is the structure I'm going to create this content for. Is it more long form, even if it's broken down into episodes, because like half an hour is typically a good chunk of time, like half an hour to 45 minutes or whatever. Again, it's very variable, and it depends on who and how established you are and all the rest of it. But what I'm seeing with YouTube, and some of the things that have benefited me, and I've learned a lot from being in the Space Engineers group with a lot of more YouTube centric creators, is the more you sort of set your stall out up front, say, okay, I'm going to film 2 hours, and I'm going to edit out 4 episodes out of that, half an hour each, and I'm going to post those every Friday, one a week or whatever. That I can see the difference, like in the analytics and everything. That works really well for YouTube. That would be quite hard to do on Twitch, because you're doing a live broadcast and you've got more interaction. And so I think that's kind of like one of the fundamental differences, and one of the big lessons that I've learned in the last couple of months through the Space Engineers group, is that YouTube there's a lot more going on in the background of YouTube about and so you're like, your production and the way of how you want to produce and present your content is very different than you would go about doing it for Twitch. On Twitch, you can more or less, like, you can't be fully unprofessional, but you can more or less be like, oh, we'll kind of wing it. Yeah. We'll see what happens.
I think this is why I'm really enjoying story stuff on YouTube, because you are following along a story. The commentary is like, for me at least, when I create these Assassin's Creed things, I stab someone, but I talk about the story. Like, I'm always in that bubble. There's nothing dragging me out of it. I'm constantly driving my story forward towards something, and it's very confined to that area, even though it's a live VOD kind of. It's still focused on that bit. So I think that's particularly why I enjoy to put my story stuff up there. It's like you said, I can say, right now we're gonna chase the story for 2 hours, and that's an episode for me, and I think that really I think that really works for YouTube. So yeah.
Yep.
That's I think we're very much in agreement on our philosophy around it. It might be different for some. Like, hell, it's probably 100% different for others, but for my sake, story stuff goes on YouTube. Because it just kind of fits there. And because if I try to do story stuff on Twitch, I'm gonna get interrupted by conversations happening, people popping in and saying hello and talking to me about their day. Nothing wrong with it. I want to point that out. I love those interactions, but it makes the story drag out so much more. We're not getting to the good parts as quickly, to put it like that. So yeah, no, that's
Yep. My view of it, right at this point, is I would pretty much stop live streaming to YouTube entirely, save for one aspect, and that is that I know all my VODs are going to be there forever. And I can then categorize them, put them in different playlists and things, and make them more accessible, make them more available. But in terms of like broadcast viewership and the sort of impact or whatever and benefit of that, as a creator and from a business point of view, I would just stop doing it. I would. So the fact that I'm already setting my stall out for the day and going to stream anyway, it makes no difference because it's the same content. So there's no additional overhead or whatever. The possible negative impact that's hard for me to tell is the fact that then that VOD will just sit there unedited. I'll never change it. It won't be highlights. I rarely would put anything like even a table of contents unless it was like a a special event stream or something like that when I might go back and do it. But other than that, I would just leave it. And as a consequence, most of those VODs kind of just sit there and they just sort of trickle along, but they don't really do much in terms of analytics, the live stuff. It just kind of gets to its natural-ish number. Maybe it doubles up over a week or two, and then it just kind of fizzles out and sits there. And occasionally someone stumbles across it and leaves a comment or whatever like that, and that's cool. And then, so like if I was doing YouTube content, this is one of the challenges that I face of what to do like going forward is I would, if I want to make more of an impression on YouTube and have it become a more substantial part of what I do in content creation, then I would do what we're doing now with the Space Engineers series, which is have a block of time where things are recorded, other blocks of time where things are edited up and made into, you know, whatever bite-sized chunks we want to produce. Short or longer doesn't really matter at that point. And then I would, in particular, what I've learned is putting that scheduling, uploading and scheduling that content to give the system and the algorithm time to kind of churn through it, recognize the files and put all the tags on and stuff like that, and then release that on a regular schedule that's not, well, that's just fitting for whatever I want to produce. Like some people do really well daily, some people do multiple per day, and some people typically it's 1 or 2 per week. That works for a lot of people. I would go, that's what I would do with my YouTube, or what I am doing with my YouTube content, and what I intend to do going forward is that dedicated YouTube content is going to be stuff that's been pre-recorded, edited up, hopefully not too much editing time, and then uploaded and scheduled well in advance so that the system has time to pick it up and register it. Because what I'd been doing previously was like, I'd do a quick recording on a Monday, edit it all up, and maybe even publish it that night or on a Tuesday morning or something like that. And you're catching yourself out then because you're not giving the YouTube system, the way it works, enough time to kind of preempt and prepare both your existing audience and any potential extension of that target audience. So there's little things like that are, you really have to learn, okay, YouTube works very, very differently to Twitch. And as I said, for me personally, if it wasn't just easy because I'm pressing exactly the same button and I'm just RMTPing or whatever it's called, if it wasn't that easy and I had to do more for it, then I would probably just stop live broadcasting to YouTube, because then I'm just subdividing my attention and my energy trying to build and maintain another audience, which is a little bit of crossover, but largely a different audience. And then I'm like, well, from a business point of view, okay, you got this one over here that's working and everything's in place, and you got this one over here that you've got to spend a lot of additional energy trying to build up. And also the viewer experiences and the streamer experience is not as good on the YouTube side. So that's kind of where I feel I'm at right now, is I'd rather do pre-recorded, edited up, and scheduled release of content over an extended period, so that you can build up a following for a series, and then do that and leave all the other live stuff on Twitch side. So it'll be interesting to see how your experience develops and what you enjoy about the one or the other. Because my concern, like from what you've described of what you enjoy with the story, at the moment, YouTube will be quite quiet, right? There won't be as many people there. There won't be as much chatter, and you'll be more focused on what you're doing. But what happens when you've got 50, 100, 150 people in the room on YouTube? It'll be, you'll just be live streaming over there then.
Well, the thing is, I'm not really looking at chat. I'm not really looking at events. There are no bells or anything going off on YouTube, no matter what people do. It is as if I'm recording it, and that's how I'm approaching it too. The reason why I'm doing it this way is I have attempted the whole pre-recording, scheduling, and everything, and done that production line of things, and it took too much of my day-to-day time to do this in a good way, compared to what I saw for gain in followers and retention rate and all of the metrics. So what my aim for my journey on YouTube is to allow the story to be told. It's not necessarily for monetization or the gain of an audience. It's more, I want to be able to tell the stories of these games and have that be available somewhere, not necessarily lose out on it. Because I think there's something to enjoy in these sorts of games together with others, but not necessarily in the direct conversation that I would end up having on Twitch. Because I think I have this mentality of Twitch is my highly interactive platform, whereas YouTube is my let's convey a story. Let's talk about the story. And I don't think the like sitting down and editing an episode of Assassin's Creed or whatnot, I don't know where I would begin to have this be a thing. However, in other games, let's say I was playing Space Engineers or Storm Works or like something that needs time to grind and build up something. That's a whole chunk of things that I can then cut out without any issue, because then it's just me building and sitting here looking at the screen dumb with my dumb face and everything, you know. But that's the kind of content that I wouldn't do live on YouTube. That's the sort of stuff that would have to be pre-recorded, but it's also the sort of stuff that I could do on Twitch, because those those moments of air I could potentially use to actually talk to people and interact while I'm doing the grinding thing, while I'm just building something up slowly. But yeah, I think it is because of the style of the game where I can finish a few missions and that feels almost episodic in itself. So that's why I'm doing it that way for my sake. But yeah, I'm also very interested and curious to see where things lead for this. But I will say there is another point to this that I haven't really touched on, and it is the fact that now that I'm no longer a student and I'm going to be working my way back into having a job, it's going to take some time before I'm there, and I might as well build up my audience and averages on Twitch again. And the way I do that is through World of Warships. So, and that is directly to do with the ability to do sponsorships or similar sort of stuff, you know, ad revenue, what it may be, because at the end of the day, Twitch is a very large part of my monthly survival. And whereas I normally don't talk about numbers or such, it has become an important part for me, and being able to build up the numbers in a good way where I know they will stay stable and I can more easily reach out to sponsors and say, hey, these are my numbers, can we have a chat? Then because that's where I was at some point. Last time I was full-time on Twitch, or when I was full-time on Twitch. I'm not full-time again, calm down. So when I was full-time, that's where I was starting to reach out. I was starting to get to that point of, let's talk numbers, let's talk how I can best represent you guys. But yeah, so it's a bit of column A, a bit of column B, but I'm actively thinking of the diversification of my my content for for fitting where the audience will have the best retention for my sake. So it's a bit of that too.
Yeah, makes sense.
And I briefly touched on monetization on Twitch, and you talked about it in the editorial meeting. That there's been some changes.
Yep.
Talk me through it, Goose.
So, blessed Mr. Dan Clancy, CEO of Twitch, had put an open letter out for what's next in 2025 on the 27th of Feb. And within that, one of the featured items was unlocking monetization for everyone. So, quoting, we want you to be able to take advantage of our monetization tools, whether you're just getting your community started or have been on Twitch for a while. In 2025, we're excited to open up monetization tools, subscriptions, and bits to most streamers from day one. This will allow creators, regardless of their status, to grow their communities and start building earnings through direct patronage. We're also introducing an option which will allow all streamers to use their earnings on purchases within Twitch. Not quite sure exactly what that means, but anyway.
Oh no, hold on. Reread that sentence to me.
We're also introducing an option which will allow all streamers to use their earnings on purchases within Twitch. So yeah, feeding back into themselves, into their own ecosystem.
Yeah, instead of paying out to the streamer, they can then allow the streamer to just instantly use this for bits or such. Oh, stop it, Twitch.
So,
go on.
No, well, the reason that this kind of came to mind is because, I just got through my last two payouts for the starting of this year, the February and March. And the resounding situation is that having now, I guess, dropped out of the Partner Plus lower tier, which I was lucky enough to get into. I need to check the dates and the numbers and everything, but I think that's probably, I'm guessing that's what it is. Funnily enough, I've seen a third of my earnings drop away. So that's a little bit startling all of a sudden, and a nice way to start this year. So like January was okay, fairly stable, but then February and March have just been like, oh, okay. So yeah, it's another round of tightening the belt and whatnot, and then looking at things like this announcement and everything. Personally, I don't know. My view of it is that the changes that they've made, it started a couple years back or whatever it was, 2 or 3 years ago, when they did the round of changing the localization, the costs and whatever. And that was the first time that the sort of dips sort of came in. And then they, and now they've gone on this raft of like huge discounts for longer term subscriptions and stuff like that. And I don't know, man. All I'm seeing is at the end of the day, they're hitting our bottom lines rather than bolstering them. And at the same time, most of the fanfare and excitement is all around like, here's 2 or 3 really, really big streamers who are just having great success and getting all the sponsorships and everything. So it's like, kudos to them. That's awesome. But now they've gone, and I was already worried with like the dilution effect that happens with the affiliates and all the benefits given to them. And I was concerned way back then when we talked about it, about there's not much differentiation anymore between affiliate and partner. I know there are, but the gap has closed considerably. Great for the affiliates. I don't think it was good business for partners generally.
No.
And now we're at the point where if they're going to open up monetization to everyone, because then presumably they'll allow advertising in to some degree with a smaller share and all the rest of it that they'll take the rest of the chunk from, and the subs and the bits revenues. I mean, where's the squeeze going to be? What are those non-affiliates going to be offered? Like 10%, 20%? I don't know. It feels very much like we're going even further down this path of sort of diluting and blurring, and I think you'll get subscription fatigue, bits fatigue, maybe less so, because bits is more of a reactionary ad hoc thing. But I think that you'll get people just seeing the same buttons everywhere they go. There'll be less differentiation for like having the partner mark will mean that little bit less potentially, I feel. And it feels kind of more like a race to the bottom. And of course, for Twitch, they don't care that much because overall, if the pool gets bigger, then they just get their chunk.
Yep.
And that's that's all they care about, the overall size of the pool, I think, for individuals. And then if you combine this with this obsession of collaboration is the goal for everyone. Surely everyone just wants to collaborate all the time and never do their own thing and create their own content and have their own unique room and vibe. And I thought it was all about building up a community and connecting with people and that. And now it's like, oh yeah, but what we meant was you have to collaborate with everyone all the time. Otherwise you don't get discovered and you don't count, kind of thing. It's kind of moving in that direction, I feel. There's no clarity in regards to any kind of measurement of content quality. So like monetizing everyone, well, I guess that's at the end of the day subjective taste, well, if someone likes it and they want to pay for it, that's cool. All power to them. But it seems a little bit like now, like you were talking about sponsors and that, where do sponsors go now? How do they look at that? What's their reaction going to be?
Yeah.
And advertisers as well. Like, is that a good thing? Or now anybody sitting there just in their boxer shorts with a, whatever, yeah, is it now, well, the numbers game adds up because now, well, you can have 1,000 of them equaling 2,000 views in total or whatever, or you can have this one guy over here, this dwarf guy who's got like 30 people watching him play this thing. So you're going to just take, well, 1,000 times $1 is $1,000 and 30 times $1 is $30. So we'll just go with the category. We'll sponsor in different ways, or we're just not interested. I feel like there's a real risk of it going kind of in that direction. And I think like when you already see the whole, like, all the long-term discounts and all the rest of it, ultimately, I feel like it's letting people kind of support you for an ever diminishing value. And putting the emphasis on, well, like just grow your channel. It's like, well, when I look at my Sully Gnome numbers and I see something like a growth of 800 followers in a year, okay, and how many of those are going to subscribe or are able to, and all the rest of it? And then you get into the, well, what am I doing now? Am I kind of like, because they've always been pushing this kind of, well, have your little progress bars, you kind of like, agitating your viewership to offer you support, when you don't really want to do that necessarily. And some people do, and that's completely fine. But, I'm not of that ilk. So it's like, well, you're kind of pushing my back up against the wall here. Like, well, sink or swim, fleece people or go under, kind of thing. And it's like, I feel like the model is incredibly hard to sustain without looking at other, like, I'm going to have to, again, look even more closely at sponsorship offers, like proper sponsorship deals, or just sponsored content, and be like, hey, you know what, gang, this is the way it's going to be from now on. Every Wednesday, it's sponsored Wednesday. So hump day is just whatever's going, because I gotta sell a little piece of my soul because I gotta make ends meet or something. Humped. Yeah, or exactly. I mean, it's kind of to the point where I just wouldn't be able to sustain doing it. It becomes more like a hobby, like a what did they call it? I've forgotten the term now, but like it's a loss leader or whatever. Like, hey, I'm here, but like this is still the mainstay of what I do. But if it becomes no longer, I mean, it already is not really financially viable. So, and I don't have a high quality of life or standard of living, or whatever you call it. Like, I don't have a low, don't get me wrong. I'm not on the bread queue yet, but I'm not going on 2 holidays a year, or buying a new car every 3rd or 4th year or whatever, or, all those kind of things. If I had like the traditional job that I used to, we're like way off of that. And it makes me wonder, it must be like this for the vast majority of even the partners as well. So, that's why so many of them are clamoring for all these different sponsorships and all the rest of it. I can't see how this is putting Twitch and all the people dependent on Twitch in a better situation. It feels like I said, like a race to the bottom.
Definitely. And like, I'm just wondering, like, where how do I say this in a diplomatic way? Why does it even matter to become affiliated or partnered anymore?
Mm-hmm.
You mentioned it a tiny bit, and like honestly, there's no incentive anymore. There is no clear, direct incentive in to be partnered. Like, we're not getting a higher sub split anymore. We're not getting, well, we're getting, I think we're getting a tiny bit better ad revenue as long as we run the expected amount of minutes or something. But there's less and less of a reason to be a partner, and now even affiliated with Twitch, because like you said, there's going to be so many channels where you can subscribe and give bits and so on now. So you're going to have this oversaturation.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, like, one of the perks is you can apply for the front page every month. No. I can apply for it, but it's the luck of the draw if I get chosen or not. And that's
Mm-hmm.
not to say that I'm going to even be on the front page. I might just be on the carousel, and that's going to be something. And even then, it's just pure dumb luck if you actually get chosen. So I don't know. Like, this is a weird move, and it's giving me spidey senses. I'll be honest.
Mm-hmm.
They already have the option of just running ads on anyone anyway, and keeping all of the revenue for all the channels that aren't monetized.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I don't understand this. I see this as a money grab. I see this as a desperate money grab from Twitch to attempt to get more people to spend money on the platform.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like you said, reaching a wider audience for who can spend money on Twitch. Because there's probably a lot of channels out there that have no monetization on them, but have viewers that would consider spending money, but they're only hanging out in this one unmonetized channel that's not gone affiliated or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And now, I'm not going to throw any names out there, but there's a few really big channels out there on the market that stream live that have refused to apply for affiliate or anything like this, just so the only monetization incentive. Oh god, I just had a realization. A lot of these larger channels have refused to become partner or affiliate so that there will be no bits or subs. The only way to support is direct tips.
Mm-hmm.
With this move, you know what Twitch could do? They could say that direct tipping or donations or whatever are no longer allowed on Twitch. The only allowed monetization would be through either subscriptions or bits. That is genuinely something they could do with this move.
Well, I mean, if they tried that one on, I think that would be the Twitch apocalypse.
Yeah, definitely. But in theory, like, if we think about it, how many would that actually directly impact? Not that many.
It's interesting that they're kind of getting closer and doing more business together with Stream Elements as well.
Mm-hmm.
Which is where a lot of people get their tipping through. So obviously not the only place. I mean, you know, for me, when I look at the breakdown now, like the monthly earnings analytics and stuff on Twitch, it's kind of like, well, I guess we're approaching the point where I don't know. I could turn the adverts up a little bit, or maybe I'm just starting a Patreon account, which I've never really wanted to do. But
you have memberships
it's like
through your merch store, by the way.
Yeah. So yeah, it's just messy, and I don't know. I mean, I get it. I just feel like it's not. I don't know, man. What like are they? It's either they're that desperate and they have to roll the dice and see if this works because they've got to start making the numbers for the parent company to consider carrying on doing it. When we're talking about Amazon, who also like kind of screwed over everyone with Prime by introducing like a Prime Plus or whatever it's called. So like people that play the normal Prime now also get advertising during all of their viewing and stuff like that. So if they've done it, whether they needed to do it or whether they've just done it because, you know, it's a new way of eking more money out, either way, you know, it wouldn't be surprising that Twitch is having to go much more through the ringer and try and balance the books and convince Amazon to keep allowing it to exist or whatever. I don't know. It's I suppose on the other side as well, you know, as usual, time will tell, and there's always a bit of fluctuation at the beginning. All I can say is the fluctuations that have come along with all of their kind of financial adjustments of how things work in the last few years have, you know, the net result for me personally is who is a partner, a multi-year partner with a very established community, a regular viewership, and a lot of people who thankfully choose to continue to support. It's getting beyond the point of financially viable. So that makes me worry for the health of the overall service and all the other people out there trying their best. Because even if you're doing this as a hobby, there are costs and everything related to it, and it might be a bit of a supplemental income that that was helpful. You're almost certainly going to be, losing money just to be broadcasting on the system going forward. I'm sure that applies to the vast majority of people out there plying their trade and doing their best to entertain. It's interesting times to say the least.
Definitely. And I'm just gonna go ahead and say, so hey Google, if you want to spit some money into Twitch and maybe have the all-encompassing super platform of live streaming and VODs, I've got ideas. Let's talk and see if we can Amazon online too. Imagine if that worked. My God. We'll just have to keep an eye on it. It's weird. There's a certain part of my pattern recognition that is kicking in and going, this is the end stage capitalism kicking in. So we'll see. We'll see where it goes. We can't really do anything else than keep an eye on it, honestly.
Mm-hmm.
And with that, I guess, what are we gonna do?
I think we should know our role.
Know your role.
It's so good.
Let's not whip that horse again. Anyway. Yes, we're going to move on to Know Your Role, and we are, I feel like we know our role by now really well.
Mm-hmm.
Recent Patreon and Conquest and Cataclysm co-star, wow, that rolled off the tongue, LimaZuluTango, has a question for us.
Mm-hmm.
How do you deal with changing something you've already established in a D&D game? Do you say, this was always that way and suspend disbelief? Or do you say, actually, you misunderstood this thing, or the thing has changed, or something else? This is an excellent question. And I know a lot of DMs have probably fallen into this very thing of sitting there going, oh, shoot, was that? How do I explain that? because a lot of DMs will probably sit there and just pull something out of their behinds as a bit of a storytelling or embellishing of details to build a scene, and then players note this down to be the law, and then you go back and something's changed. Like, I think the classical story is of the DM who talked about a mountain being beside a village, and then a few seasons later they come back, and the way the DM then described the scene was like, oh, what happened to the mountain? Oh, that's going to be interesting to know. And the DM goes, oh shoot, hold on, was there a mountain? I'm not sure how I would deal with something like, because I'm not sure if I've ever stumbled on it. What's your take on this?
Yeah, I'm trying to be thinking. I've tried to think of examples. But if there were any, they're probably too minor that I didn't even register them. It's probably just something that we put down to me forgetting a detail or whatever. But the way I would deal with it, even something like a mountain not being there, the way I see it is anything and everything in the world is malleable. You can make an adjustment and to whatever degree you need. It's all just a question for me personally about how you weave that story. What happened? Why did the mountain vanish? Has it been eroded? Was it struck by a giant, or did a Leviathan creature, burst out of it at some point? Or they didn't realize they'd been living there for 200 years, but it was actually a volcano and something triggered an eruption. I tend to think of it. I mean, I suppose it depends on, am I changing something in advance so I've thought it through, or is it I forgot to describe such and such or whatever.
Yeah.
I guess if it was the latter, I would just be whatever pops into my mind at the time. I'd be like, oh, this happened. Or I would just say, oh, you know what, you're right, that mansion is over there in the middle of that park. I'd forgotten about that mansion being there or something. Because I suppose the examples of where that might be more likely to happen would be things that the players have brought into being within the world, that I may have neglected to pick up on as a detail or simply forgotten and overlooked at a certain point. So in that case, I would probably just be like, you know what, you're absolutely right. Or I might come up with another storied reason about why it's changed from what they were expecting. I like the idea of, I suppose the key thing is I would try not to manipulate or adjust things that were central to the story, like the key theme of the adventure. So if there was, we had one once where it was essentially undead pirates that were looming large in the background, and things were starting to manifest in the world and be influenced by this growing presence of this undead pirate lord and that kind of thing. But the characters didn't know this. They were just seeing little things changing and happening around the world. So I suppose one example would be, well, I wouldn't just suddenly say, well, that just doesn't happen. And now you're fighting a dragon. Wait, what? Because they've spent 5 weeks preparing for, getting used to dealing with undead and that kind of thing, and this mysterious sea fog that's been killing entire ships' crews and whatever. Then that would be the kind of thing I would try not to do. That would be a big mental lap. So yeah, normally it would be something or if something like that was what I'd planned to happen, then it would be, something snuffed the life of that undead pirate lord. Their connection, their existence, and their power all stemmed from, XYZ object or connection to another plane or something like that, or a deity, and that deity woke up one day and decided it wasn't interested anymore, or an object was destroyed, or had been captured and put in some sort of magical demi-plane that broke the connection, things like that. Yeah, so I suppose it's I don't know if that answers the question, but that's how I would deal with it. I would almost always seek it to be for a storied reason. Something had changed, something had occurred within the world. And because we're most often dealing with fantasy, and magic and gods and things like that, it gives you, I suppose what you don't like, again, I would try to do it in a way that didn't destroy the lore and the setting, because, it's like if you took a Star Wars thing or whatever and suddenly like everyone was a Jedi or whatever, or if you change it that fundamentally, then you get to the point where everybody involved in it just says, well, what's the point of any of this then? What were we even doing here? So you got to do it carefully. That's how I would try to go about it.
So I think for my sake, if this is something that I'm intending to change, like you mentioned, then I would build a scene for it. I will build a story part for it. So it has an explanation, it has a root in something. But if this is simply something I've forgotten, if I see an RP moment to play something out, I'll just have fun with it. We'll just improv something there and then, make up a reason for why this has changed. But otherwise, if this is something that is as established as it is, without me intending to change it, I will probably just go, oh shoot, you're right, I forgot about that, and then just walk back about 5 minutes of storytelling and then redo it. It's something like that. But I think mostly no. I would fully go for the same approach of kind of build it into the story why this has changed, and maybe give a role play opportunity for it. Like talk to an NPC that might be able to embellish on the story as to why this happened, instead of sitting there as the GM and giving full on details, or not details. But then you can make things fuzzy, right? You could be talking to, I was very, very drunk. However, you could be talking to Bobby Flawless suddenly, who's recounting one of his gin stories, and
oh dear,
yeah.
I think that one variant could be if there was something that you'd brought into existence, and then you decided that wasn't really where you wanted to go. Like you'd had like a better idea, a different idea, you had a different passion, a different direction that you wanted to take things in, and it was going to have some sort of quite significant impact on the world that you're all playing in. I would go with what, as you described it, Tiger. I think fuzzy is better, because there can always be any reason, whatever. The easiest one is always some other power or being was aware of this thing and didn't like it and therefore changed it, or maybe did so by accident or whatever, a clumsy god or whatever. If you're not comfortable, or you have a new idea that you're more passionate about and you have more creative ideas coming from, then I think you just need to lay the breadcrumbs out sufficiently that people can follow along and see, or you give them a mystery. I think mystery is key. I think you have to keep a veil of mystery around it. I've once or twice I've played with GMs that have decided, oh, you know what, I got bored of this, so I did this. That is what I wouldn't do. That's the one thing I wouldn't do. You can do that, but you must do that much later. Don't do it at that point in time, because at that point in time, up until now, your players are invested.
Yeah, exactly.
In what's been going on. So it might change significantly, but as long as it's a fun ride and something weird and wacky or some mystery happens, like, you get an anonymous note slipped under your door at night in the tavern that recommends that you go and see the seer of things that lives on a rock just outside of the harbor or something, you're like, what's that all about? And then you get the hints and you get the breadcrumbs of what you need to be getting on with. I think on that basis, you can change anything. If you're too open about it, even if you really want to be, but if you take that veil of mystery down, it's a bit like, oh, well, I know how this ends now, or I know that it's all an illusion, it's all being made up, because we have that suspension of disbelief, or whatever you call it. And if you're too upfront at that immediate point in time as a GM, then I think that the players have that illusion shattered, even though they know it, obviously intellectually, emotionally and sentimentally, they're on for the ride. So I would shy away from that until much later on. Say, hey, you know that pirate you guys were chasing and turned into a dragon? Well, it's because I was reading a book about dragons and I suddenly got way more excited than the book I was reading about pirates. So
yeah, no, like for me too. Like I can easily get bored of a storyline, like, or no longer be happy with how I ended up telling a story. But I'll introduce a different story. Like I won't just whack someone over the head with a brick and say, no, you fell asleep and you woke up here. No, it'll be something that is a more urgent or more pressing matter to draw away the attention and build up something new instead. So it's not just going to be that. And if someone asks, dragonated.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There you go.
I don't know if we've sufficiently answered the question, but I think we've hit on it. It's not necessarily just one answer to it. It all depends on the story and what happens, I guess. Yeah. And I guess this kind of touches a bit on the next part. Because the way you choose to do your storytelling, the way you choose to do your detailed walk through life as such is also part of how you reach a wider audience. There are different ways we can do that. It's in the direct style of the players or the DM, but it's also in where you choose to tell it. If that makes sense. And I think I understand a bit about what you want to talk about in regards to reaching a wider audience.
Yeah, well, it's a little bit tied to what we were talking about previously as well on the content creation. And it's more like a puzzle or like, yeah, it's something that I'm like spending a lot of time mulling over because I feel like I'm in this weird position of like we have a heck of a lot of fun and I love all the storytelling and the experience and camaraderie that we have as players and with the characters and everything. I'm just I guess it's just different content, than what we're usually broadcasting. And I can't help but notice and need to think about and reflect on what can we do to like improve, learn, develop, adapt? Because the bottom line is, when I sit there of a Sunday, it's kind of a third to, on a good day, a half of the usual audience that are tuning in, which is wonderful. And I've never been like it's all about the numbers kind of thing. But at the point now where it's like, okay, this isn't all that viable. I've got to pay more attention maybe to some of these things. And I'm very curious as to what does or what doesn't translate or transmit well, and how to, what can we do to kind of add the magical ingredients or whatever it is, to make the adaptations so that we can, at least from speaking from my point of view, get to a point where I feel more comfortable and can go back to the 100% committed and in the moment, which typically am during the session anyway. But the pre-session and post-session, I'm kind of in this kind of like, this is really good and really fun and I love it and I'm looking forward to it. And then, but it kind of doesn't work on some levels, at least for me. And I'm a little bit of this is like wanting to have the conversation with you, but without meaning to have put you on the spot or whatever. But but also like looking for feedback from our community and our listeners and that, because I've had all sorts of positivity around the series and around the storytelling and the the characters and like all of us, not just like, oh, we like your character, whatever. I mean, like in the truest sense, feedback to the whole package. People are very much enjoying it. And it's like, okay, how can we, make that be the case for, the full extent of our collective communities, because it's the same for all of us, right? When we look at the numbers. So how do we get that? We're having super fun doing this. But for at least some of us, it's an actual business and, endeavor as well, as a broadcaster, as a content creator. How can we marry those two things up better? Turn that into something that functions on those different levels. And there is one particular comment that I had back as a positive feedback, was how much people are enjoying it. And both during the live stream, we had this feedback, and also afterwards on YouTube comments, that people really enjoy it. In particular, that they felt they had other tasks going on and they were able to step back and just listen to it. And they were loving being part and listening to that story, like a podcast. And that got me kind of thinking, and with all this other stuff that's going on in my mind, about, and I posted also in our shared Discord a few days back as well, the idea of doing this as more like the Acquisitions Inc. style, doing it as more of a scheduled recording session, and then producing that and publishing that, even if it was minimal, like literally just upload and off it goes, no editing kind of thing. Whether that might be something that functions for us as a group, and then using the YouTube platform rather than the Twitch platform, or doing it as some kind of, I don't know if you can do like Premiere VODs, or I guess it would be a rerun in their terminology, so it probably wouldn't work. Yeah. So that's kind of just where my thoughts were, and I felt like it kind of fit into this know your role. Maybe people out there have got some suggestions, but what are your thoughts on it, Tiger?
So it ties very heavily into how I view YouTube as a platform, where the storytelling that we're doing fits really well there, because we're not necessarily looking for audience interaction. But it is like, from what I've really enjoyed on doing this on Twitch, is the ability to sit there and immediately answer a question there and then, about where in the story are we, what is the reason behind this, and what kind of influences do we have behind it. That's something that I've enjoyed. And like, these sorts of questions isn't necessarily something that's going to stop me from doing that on YouTube, more focused. But I really do very much enjoy showing this on Twitch. But I'm right there with you, because like I don't like going on about it. Fucking numbers. Sorry for swearing. Like, it's the numbers, and they're constantly in my mind. Even though I try throwing them out, they are constantly there. Much like you're saying, fact of the matter is, at least for you and me, this like, for me, this is a substantial part of my being able to eat properly, or pay unexpected bills or such per month. I have the support of the Norwegian government in my back. However, what they give me monthly is not enough to fully cover my daily existence. And for you, this is your job. You have to think numbers, and this is something that I've always said for content creators. Do not look at the numbers unless you have to do this as a job, or you are partially in need of this. There are certain edge cases, of course. If you are super interested in the numbers and you want to learn more about the metrics, go ahead. But for most people, looking at the numbers is only going to end up with a resentment. However, that's not what we're talking about. In this very case, I like, if it hadn't been for how Twitch are starting to lower our ability to store highlights and such, I would love to just upload an episode and then have that as a rerun. But can you upload to Twitch and then run that as a rerun, or does it have to be a previous stream that you then rerun? I don't know. I haven't looked at that. But then again, there's nothing stopping us from actually being there in the chat together with people and replying to questions in text if we have already pre-recorded it. So I think it would work. It's just because we could be more story focused, then we could be more role play focused without having the intro wait, the lunch break. That can often be something that is kind of it kind of throws people off. But then again, they can just go through it quickly. I at least upload all of my episodes to YouTube after the fact, and I know people watch them, but it would be really interesting to see what we are able to do with our production value if we step it up, so to speak. And like I wouldn't mind for any of the others to keep on live streaming it if they want, but I think very much for my own sake too, being able to focus fully on just you guys would be really nice. So I'm down for it. It's just I know a lot of people would also miss it being live, but yeah, no, I think we should honestly look into the ability and the possibility of doing reruns or live view VODs. I genuinely think that could be something we could do. Yeah. Like honestly, we could pre-record and then just run it as a video on Twitch while we're just kind of sitting there and hanging out and talking even.
Yeah, exactly.
So
it'd just be interesting. I feel like it would give us an opportunity to increase the production value of the sessions in terms of like the flow of the storytelling. Maybe even add in some additional elements as we go along, because you'd have time to do that in post, like add some imagery in, like, oh, I wish I'd had this map ready for this such and such, and now I can show an image of what this store looked like that they went into, or that kind of thing. So I think overall, it's a two-parter. It stems initially from the whole, like, I don't know if I can sort of sustain this overall as part of my my live stream schedule. Just look, the way it is, and taking one of those big weekend slots on my side. But at the same time, I so enjoy the whole setup with all of us as a group and the story and everything. And then in addition, I'm just thinking, well, I think it would be overall easier on everyone. For example, we could schedule it for a point in time when Damien isn't supposed to be asleep.
Yes, exactly.
We can work around Doc's working schedule easier and stuff like that, and people's school schedules. I know we'd get into the next thing of like, well, when's the other time slot we could do it? But I'm sure, I ultimately, I feel, and I also feel like we could potentially also get a good audio podcast out of it as well, and have that as a second element somewhere that we push out, similar to how we do this one. So anyway, I just thought it was something that was on my mind and that I care a lot about. So I thought, well, let's open it up and have that part of the discussion, as well as giving our patrons and our audience members opportunities to share any thoughts and ideas they had on it too. Because it's one of those ones where we're having so much fun, you'd think surely everyone's there, or that it doesn't matter. But in the end, it does kind of matter, and And I also just wonder if we're doing ourselves justice in terms of telling the story to the fullest, like high quality extent. Because we have, we have the lunch break, we have the little bit of rambling talk afterwards, and we're all having fun with it. But it's one of those things. Okay, that's good if you're there live with it, but anybody watching the VOD afterwards, they're not gonna get that. It's gonna be like, at that point, they don't usually skip over it; they turn over the channel, so to speak.
Yeah.
So, I think then we're doing ourselves a disservice in terms of the overall story, the quality of the story, and the storytelling collaboratively that we're all doing together. I just think that I could be wrong, but I'm at least under the illusion that we're telling a good enough story and having enough fun with it that a lot of people would get something out of this. And the feedback that I've gotten live and on VODs echoes that. So I'm thinking about ways where we can, sort of maximize that and bring that to more of our respective communities.
Definitely. No, I'm like I said, I'm already right there with you in this thought, and it's the diversification of content, like, we've built our channels on certain things, and sticking with it is the only thing that's going to help reaching a certain point where that's when it doesn't really matter what content shows. But there is a certain critical mass point you need to reach first, if that makes sense. So yeah, no, I'm right there with you, and I'm very much willing to give this a go and see what we're able to do. Because yeah, no, it's one of those it's one of those formats that really, really, really needs to have all the audio be good and all the video be good and the visual aids and such. Like, you need to have everything queued up and ready to go, really. And like you said, adding things in post, much easier than, oh, let me Google this thing that I wanted to do for you guys, but I forgot, It's less of a problem to break that up while we're just simply playing and recording than it is to do that live, because live you need momentum.
Yeah,
you do. And yeah, so let's definitely present this to the others and see what they think. Hopefully people would be in on it, and I think it would also be easier for us to bring on guest players for that sort of thing, and that is something that I want to do from time to time. Yeah, and kind of saying to guest players, oh no, it's only on Sundays from 10 to 15. Right, that's when I go to church, that's when I feed my dog, it's that sort of stuff. So yeah, no, let's touch base. God, I hate that term. Well, yeah, no, I'm very I'm down. And with that, unless there's anything else we want to talk about, any last residual thoughts? No. We're gonna move on to community contributions, where there's been a big tiny contribution in the shape of Reckless. Reckless Rat becoming RecklessGrandad. Is this his first time becoming a granddad, or?
I believe so.
Very exciting.
He can correct us or correct me if I'm wrong. But...
By all means. But that is fabulous to hear, and thank you for sharing this with us. Amazing. You utilize all your grandparent rights, prerogatives to spoil this kid. Hopefully, in a good way. By all means. We had another question here from Moleytov, who says, we see you in an indoor environment most of the time, but both of you have some picturesque places near you, fjords / sheep. Is there anywhere particular you'd like to go see nature on Earth?
Mm-hmm.
Ever since I saw this question, my mind started grinding on it. Like, ooh, oh, this is good. This is a good question.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the places I really want to go to is Iceland.
Mm-hmm.
Another place I really want to go to is Italy.
Mm.
And I think the third option that hit me that I really want to go see is more stuff in Norway, honestly. Like I haven't traveled enough in my own country, but I know we have a lot of stuff to offer where I can fully sit down and just soak up the view and listen to nature for a bit. It's not like I know a lot of people will probably be like, but Tiger, you don't do that today. It's like, no, I should, but I don't. But I should, but it's something where I draw a lot of my my calmness from, my ability to center myself. Like, because if I was still living in Oslo, I would not be. I would not be.
Mm-hmm.
I struggle with cities, at least long term. Like the cities for me are for tourism and short term tourism. But no, like it's going somewhere where nature is allowed to just be its absolute wildest and showing off. That's the sort of place that I want to go to. How about you?
Yeah, similar kind of thoughts, really. Unsurprisingly, Iceland would be on that list because it's just got a bit of everything, and the more pictures of that place you see, the more you think, oh my goodness. Others would be potentially New Zealand.
Oh yeah.
Not that I just rewatched all the Lord of the Rings films again the other day. And I think one of my I very much enjoyed South Africa. It was a crazy place in terms of just like nature and the way that place has been sort of carved out by all the different forces and its position in the world and the weather and everything else. It's just kind of and seeing a little bit of that country from like all different ends of it, inland, coastline, east, west, south, quite fascinating. But one place I've never been that I would love, and it's almost the point where it's like, I'd probably go and just like retire there or something, would possibly be Ireland.
Oh yeah.
Because there are some places, like, I'm not going to try and even butcher the names right now. I'd have to look them up again, but there's a few different places I've seen there, and mostly picturesque places where you wouldn't live. You'd be in a village somewhere not far down the road or whatever, maybe.
Yeah.
But definitely that appeals to me because growing up in the British Isles and coastal and that kind of thing, it's something that I do miss very deeply. And I think that that combination of like the coastal Atlantic coast, that kind of thing, as well as some familiarity in terms of like green fields and pastures and whatever, would be very appealing. So that would probably be high up there on my list if I was to travel or look for somewhere to go and spend time.
I think I've said this before about traveling to Scotland, to Isla, where it felt like landing at home, but with a weird dialect. Because it's the same tiny airport that you walk through in about half a second. It's the same airplane that brings you there. It's a Dash 8 with dual Bombardier engines. It's fjord-like things going on. It's weird weather. It's enthusiastic people that enjoy their tourism and talking to people, and it's wild nature. And I've really enjoyed Scotland, like the west coast of Scotland, for that reason. So I think Ireland is definitely on high up on that list too for me. and New Zealand, like you said. Like I really wish there would be a possibility of going to visit Edoras, the Shire, and so on. Like all of these places, like where they had actual sets built up. It would be so cool. But yeah, it's that's a long flight for me.
It's a long flight for everyone that isn't already down there.
Yeah, except the Aussies, I was going to say. Like most other people have a really long
think
flight
it's
there.
Deceptively, it's longer a flight for the Aussies than people often think.
Yeah,
We
definitely.
always think of it in our minds as being like right next door, but they're a little bit further away than that.
It's fairly next door if you compare it, but let's
It's in the right hemisphere.
let's bring up a Google Maps here. Okay, let's say Sydney to what city would they go to? Wellington, maybe. Yeah.
Probably
okay.
Auckland, Wellington. Yeah.
Oh god, don't click on that. Go back. Why did I click on that? I didn't want that. I wanted to measure distance. So measure distance. There you go. Sydney to Wellington is 2,265 kilometers. So that's about the stretch of entirety of Norway.
Yeah, it's quite a long way.
That is quite a long way.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Like even I did it when I was younger. It's like, you just think they're kind of next to each other, right? But it's like, not really.
Well, is it though? Yeah, no.
Okay, it's not 24 hours away, but it's still.
Yeah, it is the kind of thing that you would have to fly. So, you know, it takes 2 to 3 hours to do the full flight. But still, that's it's a distance. Right. I hope that answers the question for you, Moleytov, where we want to go.
It was a fun question.
It is. It's very much a fun question because it's one of those that, like, we are able to get a little bit of an insight into our own minds, but also provide an insight into what goes on elsewise when we're not on screen, I guess. Speaking of being on screen, Discord is on screen, and something that has happened recently on my community Discord, at least, and I think you've probably seen this thing too before, is like I sat there and I've watched several conversations go on over time on my Discord where people, for instance, share a picture of a Lego thing they've built, and then that just kind of carries on a natural conversation into, sharing stories about friends who have similar sets or what different parts are being used in these. And Cthulhu responded to one of these where he said, like for instance, the bonsai one. The instructions are full of little footnotes on the pieces they are using, and it's actually really kind of cool. And then he posted some screenshots from them where, for instance, these root pieces were originally used as elephant trunks, perfect for slurping water. And that's the sort of stuff that Lego has built into it. And I just noticed this conversation. I was like, hey, that's actually kind of cool. I like this. This is a little victory for the community. Or, finding more people for sharing information with, or the joy of Stargate with, or and all that sort of stuff. There's so many tiny connections without me necessarily being directly involved in being on screen. And I think that was, like, I just found that a beautiful little moment that I thought was fabulous. There are other connections too, of course, being made. Like, Zigeran asked a question regarding cooperative games that he could play with a friend, and that erupted into a whole discussion too, and people sharing their experiences. And I sat there and I was like, yeah. These are tiny connections, but they have a big impact because it just leads to these wonderful little moments of joy, simply put. So thank you, Discord community, for doing that. And speaking of thank yous, we're going to start wrapping up here. But first, we need to say thank you to our patrons, Maringana, FionnMacCorvus, MrRoboto, Tiltedhead, and LimaZuluTango. Thank you for choosing to pledge $2 or equivalent per month to our little patron. We are very, very, very close to being a self-sufficient patron. No, podcast or something. At least in terms of hosting.
Mm-hmm.
So thank you so much for that. And if anybody else wants to have the opportunity of posting questions and guaranteed getting your answer or comment, then $2 a month. Patreon.com/exit2port. And we're going to move swiftly along to something to smile about. I'm going to kick this off very quickly. It was a TikTok I saw that made me super happy. It was someone who was walking next to a field of sunflowers.
Mm-hmm.
Where the sunflowers were they looked like they started to wilt, but like the head of the sunflower was down.
Mm-hmm.
And this person was just walking amongst them, and he noticed that birds were using the upside down sunflowers to just lay down and have naps in. The tiny birds, they were laying down on their back and just kind of chilling, and just hanging out and looking at it. And the person was able to very silently and carefully walk up to them and poke them carefully, and and it was just kind of cool to see, these birds just hanging out in this field of sunflowers. It made me smile.
Nature's little napsidents.
Yes, indeed. See, there you go. How about you?
Well, mine is so just based on the good vibes, energy, and positive feedback that I've received through different channels and both live and in the YouTube comments. I've been quite unwell of late, various issues. Not going to go into that now, but I also suffered my life long with varying degrees of depression and my mind drifting off into the dark place. I'm sure a lot of people can empathize with that too. And, that can play on your mind and affect you in many, many different ways. And one of the ways that sometimes that can impact is you can, again, it happens to everybody in life, but you can second guess and question every single thing that you're doing.
Mm.
And it was, I just lately have noticed in the last month or so as well, just people taking the time to, not just a simple, like, there's nothing wrong with a simple thumbs up or anything like that. I very much live on those. My mod team can corroborate. But just people taking the time to put some feedback in and be kind of specific about what they're enjoying and what they're kind of getting and how that's maybe helping them through difficult times themselves, being a good distraction, all those kinds of things. And so without plucking one particular one out, because I don't want to there's no difference or levels to things or whatever, I just wanted to say a broader kind of thank you to everybody, all of our listeners, and people giving us feedback, whether it's a little comment to, on one of our Discords or on the YouTube comments or any of the, the Patreon or anywhere else. Little things like that make a big difference, and they can sometimes be the little thing that gives you that smile and gives you that moment of reflection and confidence to say, you know what, okay, that worked. Even if you don't necessarily I might not feel immediately, super. And it's not about, oh yeah, hey, great, let's pat myself on my back or whatever. I'm not that, I think people know me well enough that I'm not that kind of person. But sometimes just somebody, out of the blue, leaving a comment, just recognizing and letting you know, hey, I like that. I like this and this specifically, and I like the way you did that. Thanks for doing that. And I mean that, and it encourages me as well to leave comments for other creators and folks, because it's art, doing art and content creation and stuff like that, which is just different art forms. It's difficult, and it's it's easy to lose confidence because it's abstract in a lot of ways, and you're like, well, does this actually mean anything to anyone, or is there a sort of a point to this or whatever? Even if you get your own enjoyment of doing it at that point in time, still those little doubts and shadows can loom into one's thinking. And yeah, so I just wanted to recognize that and say, thank you. You really gave me something to smile about and to get me through some of those times where it was like, not in a good place and not feeling like wanting to carry on and do things. And it really helps a lot. So big thumbs up to all of you. You know who you are if you left a comment and you hear this. I appreciate all of you.
I can very much quickly reflect this, that yes, there will be a time in any content creator's journey where likes are wonderful. Don't get me wrong. It does truly and madly help. And also, speaking of, please comment and say hello on Spotify. I want to check out that feature. Anyway, this, like, the thing is, seeing numbers go up at some point, or at some times, it just kind of goes a bit bleak and it feels very static. Even if it still goes up, it's still positive, you're still doing good, but from time to time you just need that little, hey, content creator, I really enjoyed this. And it can revitalize the importance and the impact the numbers have, if that makes sense. Like, because they're no longer just numbers, they are actually tied to something or someone saying, this is what I enjoyed. And like, I'm not saying they need to always be there, but from time to time, those little comments make a world of difference, like you just said.
Mm-hmm.
Speaking of a world of difference, I am incredibly hungry, as it's now 15:38. So we've been recording for 2.5 hours now. I don't think we're going to be cutting much from this. But yeah, I am definitely going to go have myself some dinner. And you should probably think about that too, Mr. Been up since the dawn of ages or something. I don't know where I'm going with this.
Yeah, I haven't adjusted. Like, I feel like I've gone through the clock change. That's why I was genuine in my answer earlier, and then I had to rethink it for some reason because it's just really bright and sunny here today. I'm just like, oh, it's 6 a.m. Okay, let's get up. And I even had my own internal inner monologue confusing me. Like, well, really, it's 5. No, it isn't. Nothing's changed. Shut up. Oh yeah, but no, it's cold and sunny, and that's kind of my favorite conditions, so it's fine.
It is fine indeed, and we hope you will consider coming back in the next episode and exiting back to other ports together with us. But we also hope you will consider joining us in our live adventures, be that on Grumbles' channel or my channel or on either of our YouTubes. We appreciate you very much. And without further ado, it's going to be a goodbye from me and a goodbye from Grumbles.
Good vibes, everyone.
Goodbye.